Hello again, welcome back to another episode of Spacing. I'm going to be talking about the first day of the week for LCK. It was T1 versus Guangdong Freaks in the first series, and then later it was DRX versus D plus Kia, or used to be known as Damwon Kia. So, I'm just going to jump right into the first game of T1 versus Guangdong Freaks. T1 had drafted a pretty exceptional draft, in my opinion, in the beginning. They had put Jace, Gragas, and Lee Sin into the first 3 picks on their side, on red side. And this allows them to have a lot of flexibility of where champions are going to go. You can put the Jace mid and the Gragas top. You can put the Lee Sin mid, which admittedly isn't as great as it used to be in previous years, but you still can do it. If absolutely necessary, you can still flex these picks, that pick that way. With the Gragas, you can put him in the jungle and mid lane and top lane. They're all just really flexible and allowed to be moved around. So it makes it really hard for the enemy to have a great idea of where these picks are going to go. And so that gives you a really good advantage in draft, because their later picks might not be geared towards what you're going to pick. Essentially, their B4, B5 are going to be the picks that you're going to be looking for, and then that R5 is going to completely consolidate your team comp, and then you'll have the choice of where to put things on that last pick, and then that last pick will be slotted in perfectly. So, really excited to see that. I think this is a bit of a deal with G2 versus Mad Lions influencing a little bit of the way they think. They haven't really done this a whole lot in LCK where they are able to flex these picks. So I was really excited to see something like this already. So really great to see. Just jumping into the game now with Zeus in the top lane. It happened quite early in the game. Young Jay came top lane, came through that tri-bush, as you'll see, and then he manages to sneak behind and then get Zeus's flash early. Now this is because he did avoid Zeus's first ward that he placed in that river bush. Completely, he completely avoided it. It was really smart by Young Jay, admittedly. A little scuffle happens, flashes, and then later on, Owner comes by, places a ward for Zeus, but it is in the river and not in the bush itself. Now this is something that I have talked about, at least by myself, about how these wards mean a whole lot of where you place them. If you place them in the bush, and the jungler has a notion to jump into the bush with their ability, or using the blast cone to do it really well, it makes it so your ward becomes very useless and it doesn't actually see the person. So, because Owner hadn't put it in the bush, which I believe he should have, Young Jay comes back, dashes into the bush, and then shows up to this Zeus Jace that has no flash, and they end up getting the kill. So really big props to Guangdong Freaks for pulling that off. That was really, really big for them in the beginning, although I will preface this by saying it actually did not end up mattering. So, really exciting to see from the bot lane next is June was playing a little bit in the open, and Keria on the Thresh, which we all really like to see because we're on 13.4 this week, and these melee supports have gotten buffs. Specifically, the Thresh has gotten pretty significant changes. Anyway, June was playing a little bit in the open, and Keria manages to land a really nice hook onto June, and they managed to get him killed because Gumayushi is able to tag him also with the Gravitum. It's just, there's no respect at all from June of their capabilities with the Gravitum and the Thresh being able to lock him down super, super effectively. So they end up getting him early, and then they also are able to kill the young... Sorry, who is this? Taeyun. My bad. they're also able to get the Tate in at the same time. So really great to see that they're actively making these plays in the bot lane already with these melee supports. I was really excited to see it. But because they had gotten the summoners from the bot laners in this encounter, it really meant that they had so much control later on, and this is something I'll talk about a little bit in just a moment. But after getting these 2 kills, the game slows down quite a lot. You'll see that the mid laners are kind of moving around towards the bot lane, kind of seeing if they can make something happen. Nothing comes of it, of course, but it is nice to see that there was an attempt already to go at the bot lane from T1 with the summoners down from their bot from Kwangdong Freak's bot lane. Just after, you know, the slow bit part of the mid laners moving around, Keria manages to get yet another hook on June, and the Lulu dies quite easily. There really wasn't a whole lot for him to do because the glacial rune had placed those 3 Brays out perfectly, and there was no way he was walking away from Thresh Flay, Thresh Hook, and that glacial. Really great to see T1 is actively trying to make things happen with these summoners down. That is something that was a really big theme in these games, is that he was able to, or the whole team was able to really make things happen with these summoner timers down. That's something we typically do see more of in pro play, less in solo queue, of course, just because summoners, depending on where you're at, aren't always timed. So it was really nice to have that really, really impactful amount of gameplay, I would say, just from that simple thing of knowing when the summoners are offline. So Youngjae does manage to get the Rift Herald top, and then Owner gets the Mountain Dragon in response of this, which, to be honest, I would rather have the Mountain Dragon, just because it is really, really strong right now, and it really is impactful for the members of T1 just because they're naturally they're just not building as much resistances. But on the Gragas and the Thresh, they're going to get a lot more from it because they're naturally tanky with their HP. They naturally get more armor, and so it just makes them a lot harder to kill in this game. And you'll see later on that it becomes a big problem for Kwangdong Freaks to be able to really do anything against T1 because of the massive lead they get from the bot lane plays that did happen. So Youngjae, after getting the Rift Herald though, does go towards top lane to invade the Krugs. Unfortunately, Owner shows up after taking that Mountain Dragon, says hello. Owner does admittedly get quite low, so it was a little bit scary for a second there, but Zeus shows up and just kills Youngjae. I was really disappointed in Youngjae because I thought, you know, why are you here right now? You should just know that your Renekton cannot move. He has maybe 400 HP. He's not in a position to contest with you for some Krugs. It's just, it made no sense. Even if there's not a dive angle for Sejuani, there's nothing. It was just a bit of a disappointment to see. So that was probably where things start to fall off for Kwangdong Freaks. Just about a minute later, too, they do get their revenge on Zeus with Zeri, Sejuani, and the Renekton piling onto him and killing him in the lane. So that was something that kind of gave them a little bit more confidence, I would say, in the game. They managed to get some plates as well with that Rift Herald being placed afterwards. You know, I wouldn't really say it did a whole lot for them in the end, though, just because this game was really dominated by T1 in the bot lane. After these events, Faker manages to grab the flash from Victor with his amazing cast that he threw out. The Victor had to avoid dying, so he flashed his ultimate. And because of this, a little bit later on, we see Owner and Faker come back to the mid lane, and they manage to get the kill onto the Victor because he has no flash anymore. So really unfortunate that Bulldog had these events transpire. I wouldn't say it's completely his fault. Owner is just really running around the map, kind of helping every lane out in the correct times, in the correct positions. It's might have been due to spacing that he had a little bit of a harder time avoiding losing his flash against the Gragas. But hopefully Bulldog can sort this out, at least for future games against T1 and future games in the LCK, to make things a little bit smoother so he doesn't have to burn essential resources for somewhat no reason at all. At about 16 minutes, there's already a 6k gold lead from T1 just because of their bot lane. Zeus kind of smashing the top lane on the Jace. Faker and Bulldog, they're both pretty even. It's mainly just Faker is making stuff happen, and Bulldog is admittedly not, because he has no augments. He has not enough CS for enough items to make things happen. So a lot of the game relies on the Renekton and the Victor to actually be able to make things happen, but they need gold and they need kills, especially for the augments for Victor. So right now in this game, with a 6k gold lead, or I guess for Kwangdong deficit, there's really not a whole lot for them to do. And then easy enough, T1 just go for the Baron at 20 minutes. And then they just run at Kwangdong Freaks, and then they ace them, and then they end the game at 21 and a half minutes. So that was it was a really big stomp. I think it was just overall the whole team really showed up strong. Something that I'll say about T1 is Monte Cristo talks really, really highly of them, and I agree that they're probably one of the best teams in the world. I would like to see some great performances, at least internationally, from them this year. Of course, last year they were in the finals, and it was a bit of an upset from DRX, and they ended up winning. I just hope we don't get a repeat of that. So as long as everything goes smoothly in international events, I think this is definitely the #1 team in the world. No doubt in my mind. I don't see any other team in the LCK that really have a strong opposition for T1. I can't imagine, D+ coming back in playoffs or anything, or KT Rolster. Although admittedly some of these other teams like Genji and KT Rolster have been showing pretty good signs this year, I'm not really hopeful that they're going to be able to take down this monstrous giant. So next we're going to move into game 2. We're just going to start off with the draft again. Kwangdong Freaks, they draft Ashe and Jhin, and T1 respond with Varus, and then later on it's an R4 Kalista. I really do like the Kalista here because it ensures the Varus will not die to any Ashar because of the Fate's Call. And I'll go into that a little bit later. But for T1, they really had an easy time in this game, and we'll just jump in why. So, a big issue with the Tristana into the Gragas, which was picked by Kwangdong Freaks, the Tristana. She can't jump into the Gragas because the E will just cancel it. So you can't place the bomb and jump onto the Gragas to get that massive amount of burst damage that you are usually against other mages that don't have an interrupt for that W. So the Tristana loses a lot of her pressure in the lane, and it makes it so she doesn't have a whole lot of windows to get solo kills or get any massive leads. So it becomes a pick that is good later on in the game, but because of the way the game went, it actually didn't matter because they fell behind yet again in this game. So Kwangdong Freaks early on because of the Jin and the Ash, they have a little bit more pressure, at least level 1, to get some damage off with the poke in their longer range. They do manage to get the wave in a little bit early, and then they go for a dive against Guma and Carrier, but Youngjae jumps onto Carrier, and they trade 1 for 1. Varus gets the kill, and then Faker teleports while this dive is happening, and then he chases after Taeyoon and June, and they both burn their flashes. And just like last game, T1 were exceptional at using these timers to get kills, and we'll run into that right next. T1 get 2 more kills bot lane because June and Taeyoon were staying too long against Carry and Guma, and so June just dies, and then they just run down the Jin and they get that kill too. It was really a great showing that T1 are good with the summoner spells, but on top of that, Jun and Taeyoon are having a little bit of a problem with knowing what to do at certain times. They just really overstayed a little bit too long and were completely in the wrong position to be there at the time with no flashes. It's kind of, I would say, a thing that can be improved in Blitz games, which I'm a really big fan of. Real quick, Blitz games are just around 14 to 16 minute games where you're just learning about the early stages of the game. You just do a normal game, you get into it. Once you get to about 14 to 16 minutes, depending on how long you really want it to go, it's typically the coach's decision. You just end the game, everybody just leaves, and then you go back again. Usually same draft, you do it over and over about as many times as you really want to get a really good feel of how matchups go, how jungler clears go, about how you can make things happen on the map at certain times in the early game. It's a really, really beneficial method of learning League of Legends. So, again, actively, T1 has been making a lot of plans around these objectives and the way that they make things work with the summoners being down. It just feels like T1 right now are actively thinking about what they want to do through the whole game, and I really, really like to see that. I can't stress this enough that thinking ahead into the future while you're playing the game is super, super, super important. It is probably one of the most important things that you can do is be actively thinking about what you want to do in the future, because if you do this, if you think more about what you can and can't do, it helps you gain a lot better of a game sense to know when things do work and when things don't work. So later on, T1 again get another 2 kills in the bot lane when Youngjae shows up with his Maokai R, but unfortunately for him, Owner is up. The flashes, I believe, were back up by then, but it didn't matter because Guma ults Taeyoon. Taeyoon can't catch up to where Youngjae is, and Youngjae ends up falling, and so they just fall apart, and June was further up than the Jin, so Youngjae and June both end up dying, unfortunately for both of them. Guano Freaks really were having a hard time spacing in this game, which we were talking about a little bit with the Victor, but on this game it was Tristana because Faker is able to get the flash again, I believe, on the Tristana, and I think it was Faker that flashed onto the Tristana. Owner is there as well, shows up and is able to clean up the kill. It was really excellent by T1 and Faker and Owner to be able to make this play happen as easily as they did. So a little bit after this, Cardinals start to grab a couple kills here and there, but unfortunately for them, just like last game, the little bit that they do grab is just not enough at all. I would hope that they could make their early game a little bit stronger so they don't have to worry about getting rolled even after they get the kills. Again, this game, Guangdong Freaks relies on gold too much, so they just fall apart after losing a lot of resources just from T1 controlling the whole map. So their champions can't really play the game. At 17 minutes, they're 6k down. They just keep getting turrets and objectives, losing turrets and objectives, and there's very little hope for Guangdong to actually make it out of this. At 18 and a half minutes, we see the power of the Callista, like I was, which I was alluding to earlier, is the support Callista with her Fate's Call, the ultimate, pulling the Varus out from any kind of engage that happens, keeping him safe. And so basically any engage that happens, like a crystal arrow, enchanted crystal arrow, I believe, hits, it does nothing. What are you going to do after that comes out and then he just gets pulled away and you can't touch him anymore? Along with the Callista, she has really high early damage, and she can go the Umbral and be able to clear wards just fine like any other ADC support. Her Sentinels do grant a little bit of safety. I would rather they got a little more buffed and were able to see a little bit more, just because they feel a little bit underpowered compared to just any kind of vision benefits you can get from any other champion. But they're better than nothing. So at 24 minutes, there was a look to go on to T1. Zeus had flanked a little bit too far, and so they end up dying. And again, Guangdong are getting a little bit here and there, but it really doesn't matter. The game starts to slow down, and then T1 just start to grab the dragons, and they get Mountain Soul, and then the game just ends without much going on at 29 minutes. And I think that's the right way to do it. I think after the lead that they got, they can just slowly gain these massive objectives. The Mountain Soul makes it so there's no way for Guangdong to actually be able to kill their opponent. So well done by T1. I think this was an extremely good showing, just like always, and I hope that we can see more in the international events from them. I really enjoyed making this video of spacing. I hope that the audio is not terrible. I know it's a little bit echoey in here, and I think when it warms up a little bit more and I can open these glass windows, that it will kind of mellow out. You might hear a little bit more background noise though, so we'll see how things go. But I think I'm starting to get a little bit more of a hold. I think this video will be a better improvement on the last one. If you have any ideas or suggestions or just feedback for me, I would really love to hear it, as I'm actually really enjoying making these videos already, even though I'm just starting. Thanks for watching. Bye.